Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Kim Brown with the Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities, Transition and Employment Projects, and the Montana Deaf-Blind Project. And Teresa Baldry and I will be your moderators for today. Live captioning is available for today's session. To access the captions, open the captioning link that I've posted in our chat box. And Susan, if you could advance us one more slide, please, that should show our caption link. There you are, thank you.
Absolutely.
You will want to open that link in a new browser window, and then you can shrink the window with the captions in it. The captions do scroll up from the bottom, so it's helpful to move it to the bottom of your screen, and that way you can see both our presenter slides and the captions. Today's webinar is sponsored by the Montana Deaf-Blind Project, which is funded in whole or in part by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, or OSAP, and through a contract with Children's Special Health Services at the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. The statements shared in the presentation today do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the sponsoring departments. All attendees are currently muted. This cuts down on the background noise so that you can hear our presenter, but at any time that you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, feel free to type your question or comment into the chat or question box, and only you, the moderators, and the presenter will be able to see what you've typed into that chat or question box. If you do not see the box on your screen, look to the upper right-hand side of the screen and you'll see an orange box with a white arrow in it. If you click on that, it will open your GoToWebinar dashboard, and then you'll see the question or chat box. For those of you who requested Montana Office of Public Instruction renewal units when you registered, those will be emailed to you after the webinar, and it can take a couple of weeks to get those out. Please note that you do have to have pre-registered in order to receive the OPI credit. A certificate of attendance is available to all attendees, and that will be sent out to you in a follow-up email that comes from GoToWebinar tomorrow. There will be a link in that email, and if you click on the link, it should take you to a PDF file format version of your certificate of attendance. Today's session is being recorded for the Montana Deaf-Blind Project and for the Transition and Employment Project's resource libraries. By participating in the webinar, you grant permission for any chats and/or questions that you submit through the webinar platform to be recorded. The video for today's webinar will be posted to our 2 training archives pages, and I will put the URLs or website addresses for those in the chat box shortly. The handouts for today's session are already available on both of those websites, and they're also available for download in the handouts section of your GoToWebinar dashboard. So again, if you don't see that, click on the white arrow that's inside the orange box on the upper right-hand side of your screen. There's a box called, or a tab called Handouts, and if you click on that, you will see the slideshow for today, as well as another handout that our presenter has provided. I'll put the evaluation link for today's session in the chat box later during the webinar. We do have a short evaluation. I think it's about 8 questions. We really hope that you will fill that out. We read through all of the feedback and use it to continue to improve and to plan the webinars that we're offering. So again, please do be sure to fill that out. If you don't have a chance to grab the link out of the chat box today, the link will also come out to you in that follow-up email from GoToWebinar tomorrow. And now I'd like to turn things over to Ellen Condon for a few words about the Montana Deaf-Blind Project, and then to Teresa Baldry for how and who to refer to the project. Ellen?
Thanks, Kim. Welcome, everybody. The Montana Deaf-Blind Project is a federally funded project that provides technical assistance to improve services and educational outcomes for children with a dual sensory loss. Our project strives to increase awareness and understanding of dual sensory loss in children that impacts development, learning, and overall access to information. Our project is working through these webinars to increase the early identification of children with a dual sensory loss so that we can make sure that they get connected with accommodations to ensure access as early as possible. So I'm going to turn it over to Teresa and she'll tell you how to refer. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. On the slide in front of you, you can see an image of our home page on the upper left corner. And under our physical address, under the right corner, you'll see the address for locating that website. The blue bands on our webpage are important for navigation. The top blue band gives you all of the subject items where you can navigate to. On our homepage is where you'll find a frequently asked questions, as well as the Montana Deaf-Blind Referral Checklist. These two will help you with who to refer to the project and how. At the bottom of the web page, on all of our web pages, second photo, thank you, Susan, you'll see all of the ways to contact us. So there you can reach us by phone, fax, email. There's a contact form that can be filled out if there's a short subject that you'd like to send some information on. We also have a Facebook group that's closed. We provide information there on upcoming trainings, as well as articles that we found that are important to send out to all of you. So please feel free to check them all out and be in touch. We look forward to connecting. Back to you, Kim.
Thank you, Teresa. And with that, I would like to welcome back Dr. Susan M. Bashinsky. And Susan, this is our fourth time, I believe, maybe fifth, that we've had you here, and we are ready to make you an honorary Montanan. Susan is a professor of special education and is currently serving as the interim dean of the Missouri Western State University Graduate School. She has more than 40 years of experience working with learners who experience multiple disabilities, including deaf-blindness and Charge syndrome. Throughout her career, Susan's research interests and areas of expertise include early communication, gestural communication and language development, augmentative communication, and cochlear implants for learners who experience deaf-blindness. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim and Teresa and Ellen. I am so excited to be back with you all again. My day job doesn't allow me to do what I love, which is working with and talking about learners who experience deaf-blindness and their families. So I'm happy to be an honorary Montana EN. I don't know what that word is. Just don't make me come up there in December and January when the snow's 70 feet high, because I'm a wimp and I couldn't live with that. So thank you all. I'll be there. I am happy to have a chance to follow up on a webinar we did 4 weeks ago. Maybe some of you, I hope that some of you who attended that webinar February 3rd, which was focused on early identification, are here with us today, because we're going to pick up sort of where we left off and talk about, well, after you identify these babies, these toddlers, these young children with deaf-blindness or possible deaf-blindness, then how do we move into intervention? What do we do? Because if we just identify the children and we don't do anything, you don't need me to tell you that's purposeless, right? So before we start on new content, I do have one note about that last webinar 4 weeks ago. One of the topics about which I talked with you was newborn hearing screenings. And those of you who might have been in that session, you experienced what I hope you all don't today, but I know myself, so you probably will. I get a little panicky when I see that I'm running out of time. And in my haste to provide an answer about the relative benefits and procedures of the two primary types of newborn hearing screening, autoacoustic emissions and AABR, I don't think I left everybody with a comprehensive picture of what those two tests are really useful for and how they function and how the results work. So I created a supplementary handout to try to explain that in a lot more detail than I was able to on February 3rd. That has been posted graciously by Kim, Teresa, and Ellen on the site with the webinar recording from February 3rd. So even if you didn't participate in that one, check that handout. I tried to be a lot more complete and clear than I probably was during the actual webinar. And for that, again, I apologize, but I'm trying to make up for it. So the handout with which I provided you for today, it's an action planning form, not very sophisticated, but I am projecting on you my own problem. So I apologize if it doesn't seem appropriate for you. But I know whenever I go to a conference or I go to a session, a talk, I hear things that I want to remember, that I want to bring back and incorporate in my own practice, in my own teaching. And if I don't write them down at that moment, I don't do them. And it's not because I don't want to do them, it's because I don't remember to do them. So there is an action planning form. It's very simple. It just asks you to record your thoughts about what is something you want to remember. I hope that in the next hour and a half, you each can find at least one thing that you want to remember, maybe one resource that you haven't thought about using before, and some way that you're going to know that you implemented that, you used that, because I don't want to waste your time. I'm thankful to you, every one of you, for deciding you want to give up an hour and a half of your day today to be with us. And I'm just hoping that everybody can find at least one thing that can be helpful in your own practice or in your own families. So with that, Kim, before I launch into the content, could you put up the first poll, please? Because I would really love to know who's with us today. So I would just like you to indicate for me your primary role with persons who experience deafblindness. We are not ignoring people who serve in roles other than the 4 specifically listed. There's an other, and if you're an other, please put your role in the chat. The reason we've done this is GoToMeeting only allows us to put this many choices. So we're not devaluing you, we just can't, we don't have any more space. So Kim, I trust the answers are coming in.
Yes, they are. And
Okay, good. I can't see them, so that's good.
about 15 more seconds here, and I will share the results with you.
Thank you.
And this is Teresa coming in. We have state deaf-blind project specialists, an
Good.
early childhood consultant on deaf-blindness, more for state deaf-blind projects, supervision, someone who supervises TVIs and COMs, and an early intervention specialist.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Teresa. Okay, great. I see that we have 4% of the group are family members, and thank you. That's the primary thing I want to say to you. You're busy people, you have family responsibilities, and I'm so grateful that you've joined us. Again, it's not that I don't appreciate the teachers and comm specialists and administrators and related services people. I do, but I'm so grateful that we have some families with us. 27% teachers of all flavors, that's great. 44% related service providers. I'm guessing we probably have some speech pathologists, OTs, PTs. I heard about comms. And some administrators, 10% administrators. That's up from what I've had in the past. Thank you. I'm really excited that you're here. And the 21% other, I think, Kim, Teresa, you've taken good care of me to let me know who those folks are. So thank you. It's important for me to know who you are. I read your names on the registration list. Some of the names, some of the folks I know. So hello to the people I know, and let's get going. Susan, quit wasting time. Here we go, but I can't make the slides move. There we go. The agenda is primarily the first 4 topics here. We'll do a quick review again of the criticality of early intervention, why it's important. Again, for many of you, especially the early intervention specialists, you could do a better job of presenting this than I could. So you could take a power nap for those 2 or 3 minutes. Legal requirements for providing supports for young children suspected of dual sensory loss. Then the bulk of the presentation will be these next 2 points, recommended practices and priorities that I've divided out according to 3 primary environments. We'll look at those in a minute. This is what made sense to me, because I see the possibility for intervention as very different in these three environments. So we'll talk about those. And in each of those, or for each of those three environments, I'll also hit on what I think the priorities are, what the priorities should be. And then we will talk about recommended practices in 4 different category elements for each of the 3 environments, all right? Then if you choose to download the PowerPoint, the last 10 slides are about the importance of routines and about routines. And to be totally honest with you, I don't think we are going to have time to cover those together today. I think with questions and polls and the information I have, we probably will run out of time after we cover the environments and the categories of intervention. But if we have extra time, I remember from my teacher preparation program, right? Always over prepare so you have stuff about which to talk. And we all know how important routines are in every environment, in every situation, for every learner who has dual sensory loss. So routines are critical. I'm not trying to dismiss their importance, but those slides I put together in a way that I think they'll stand on their own if you care to review them. And they're at the end, but don't get upset with Kim, Teresa, Ellen, or me if we don't cover those together. Why early intervention? Again, I think many of you could explain this as well or better than I. From the National Center on Deaf Blindness, they quote and tell us that the earliest years of a child's life have a profound influence. The earliest years of a child's life have a profound influence on her ability to learn, to move, and to interact with others for the rest of her life. And this is so especially true for a young child who experiences deaf blindness, because physical, communication, cognitive, social, and emotional developmental domains are so deeply intertwined. One impacts the other, one impacts all the others, and one is impacted by all of the others. So we really have to get in there as soon as we can possibly identify these children and start supporting them and their families. Because deaf blindness is especially impactful since it limits accessibility. And you're going to hear me say that word, access or accessibility, so many times today, but you know that's what it's all about, because deaf blindness limits environmental accessibility, right? And access is the foundation for learning. We have to access new things, new people, new places, new information to learn. So a disability that limits access is very, very important. In a young child who experiences deaf blindness, 2 of her 3 distance senses, vision and hearing, are impacted. And this, if you haven't heard it described this way before, it's intended just the way distance means. Distance means something far away from you, right? We have 3 senses that allow us to gather information from far away from us: our eyes, our ears, and our smell, right? And in kids who experience deaf blindness, 2 of those 3 are impacted, maybe in a small way, maybe in a very significant way. But if the two of the 3 distant senses are impacted, that means the child must rely on her contact senses. And again, contact as you would define contact, right there in immediate touch, immediate proximity, contact with one another. That child is reliant on those contact senses to learn about the world. And our contact senses are our touch and our taste. Think about it. Try to think about it. We really can't imagine it, in my opinion. But if you could only use taste and touch to learn about the world, how much would you be able to learn, right? Early identification, the earlier the better. Earlier identification is positively correlated with a reduction in the negative impacts of deaf blindness. You know that, I know that. Learning is all about information gathering. The sooner we can support a kid to gather more information from the environment, the better off the outcomes are going to be, full stop. So let's talk about the legal requirements, all right? some people get confused about this. I've heard people say, well, no, that child with deaf blindness can't get services until she's 3, or no, that child can't get services until she's 2. And the truth of the matter is, according to the Part C regulations under the Infants and Toddlers with Disabilities program of IDEA, children from birth up to age 3, and those words are chosen intentionally that way, up to age 3, who experience deaf blindness, or people believe that child has dual sensory loss, are typically eligible for early intervention services under Part C. In many, many states, those services are required to be provided to families at no cost. There are a few states where there is a sliding scale for cost for services birth to 3. So all I can do, because I know there are people from many, many states on this session today, check your own state. But kids are eligible from the time they are born or from the time they are identified. They might not be born, they might not be identified within 2 or 3 days of birth, but they might be identified within 1 month of birth, or maybe 6 months, or whatever it is, right? So from the time they are identified to age 3, kids receive services under Part 3. When a learner, a child with deaf blindness, reaches the age of 3 years, and I mean on their 3rd birthdays, all right, they transition into special ed services under Part B of IDEA. And what some people, and again, maybe you, maybe not you, some people get a little confused about this is, well, those children are only eligible for free services from the public school district if they go to an on-site program. Not exactly. Yes, if a 3-year-old participates in an on-site program, yes, that child must be provided services at no cost to the family. But if a child with deaf blindness receives in-home services, even at the age of 3 years, it is a federal requirement that those services must be provided free of charge by the public school system. All right, so whether the child attends an on-site program or not, from birthday 3, it's a federal law that that child must receive support services at no cost to the families. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Teresa, I'm going to come to you for some questions in just a minute or so, okay? So what we're going to do today as we look at these things, these issues of early intervention, we know that children with deaf blindness, adolescents with deaf blindness, they are identified at many, many different ages. One of the things about which we talked 4 weeks ago was that of the entire national census, and it just happened to hold exactly true in Montana as well, birth through 21 years of age, only 6% of that entire range of kids who experience deaf blindness are under the age of 3. That's not very many. So we know that many learners are identified at age 5, at age 8, at age 12 years, at age 15 years, sometimes even older. And sometimes it's because that learner acquires a sensory loss because of a genetic syndrome or an accident or an illness. And I'm not really so concerned about those because those learners might not have had deaf blindness when they were younger. But it's my belief that many kids with deaf blindness are not identified when they're 3 or 4 years old or younger because we just don't do our jobs as well as we should. So we need to try to ramp up our game and do a better job. We need to listen to families, we need to listen to our guts, and we need to say, I think something's going on here. Let's evaluate it. Let's check it out. Because this session today is focused on early intervention, we are going to talk about strategies that may be used in 3 primary environments. In a NICU, when you are involved in-home interventions, so you're going into those homes of the families who are here with us today, or those of you who work in on-site preschool programs. And the reason I've chosen to divide the content into these 3 different categories, the kinds of things we may or may not do are quite variable in these three environments, right? You can't do in a NICU what you can do in a preschool classroom. You know that. You don't need me to tell you that. But that's my rationale for dividing it this way. And then in regard to each of those environments, the NICU, in-home, and preschool on-site services, we're going to examine elements of intervention in these four categories. So if I could see you right now, some of you are going to be rolling your eyes. This is my attempt to be clever, okay? And you can see I can't be very clever. I was trying really hard to come up with some kind of a mnemonic to help people remember what are those four things. So I came up with 4 T's, right? 4 T's: touch, talk, transport, and tangibles. So we're going to talk in the NICU about touch, talk, transport, and tangibles. In-home services, touch, talk, transport, and tangibles. That's all true, but I really don't mean transport as only transport. I mean it as movement, all right? But movement doesn't start with a T. So I was trying to be clever. And I think movement is connected to transport. When you're talking about a baby, as you move the baby from one place to another, you're transporting the baby. So try to remember 4 T's, but then convert the third one to an M. How about that? Okay. So the last point before we're going to talk about, see if there are any questions. I used this slide before. So some of you go, yeah, you've told me that, but I think it bears repeating. We're talking about access to the environment, access to things, people, activities in the environment. And Jan van Dyke came up with this quote. I did not. I would love to claim it. It's not mine. But when we're talking about a very young child, any child with deaf blindness, what we're talking about, we need to be talking about, is inviting that child out of her own body to join us in the world. We're inviting her out of her body to experience the environment, to build connections with people and things, even if it's the family cat, other people, siblings, grandma, the different parts of your home. We're inviting that child out of her own body to connect with the world. And you say, why is that so important? Especially for young children with significant vision and hearing losses. They don't even know there's a world out there. They know this thing of self, and they don't have a self-identity. I'm not trying to say they have a well-developed concept of self-identity, but their world is this thing that is their body. And we need to remember, we've got to coax them into coming out to join us. So Teresa, before we start with the NICU stuff, do you have any questions or comments for me?
I do not, Susan. We're all listening attentively, so please carry on.
Okay.
This is Kim. I did have a question. Sorry to interrupt. You had originally wanted the second poll launched about federal legal requirements. Do you still want that?
I forgot. Yes, my bad. Thank you. And I even have my cheat sheet right in front of me. Yes, would you launch the, Kim, would you please launch the second poll? Thank you. So what I'm asking, we talked about the legal requirements for services. So what are the federal legal requirements for early intervention and or special education services for a child identified as having deaf blindness? And you may choose 1, 2, 3, or 4 of the answers that appear on your screen. Kim, thank you for keeping me honest. I only went 1 slide too far, right? I trust the answers are coming in. I don't see any evidence of that. Do you?
They are, but you know what? It would have been good just to skip this poll, because even though you told folks they could select all that apply, it's only letting them choose one. So their answers are not going to be totally correct anyway. My apologies.
That's okay. Not a worry. So let's just you want to go ahead and display the answers and I'll talk them through the correct answers. Let's just cut it off, because if they can't, they're struggling with what to answer anyway. Is that fair?
There we go.
Okay, so the really cool thing, really cool thing is that 68% of you who felt yourself forced into making one choice chose that kids are eligible for Part C services right after birth as soon as they're identified. And that is absolutely correct. So congrats to you all. And the second one that has 24%, that is also a correct answer. Regardless of whether they're served at home or at an on-site program, the child is eligible unquestionably in all 50 states for free SPED services from their 3rd birthday on. So congrats to all of you, and thank you, Kim, for keeping me on track with what I intended to do. I appreciate that. All right, trying to find the cursor. So let's talk about the NICU. I don't know what your experiences have been. In some cases, I have worked alongside someone where a speech path and a SPED teacher were allowed to actually go into a NICU and work with babies. In many situations, I have heard stories where the NICU does not allow a single person other than parents. I mean, they don't even allow grandparents in the NICU. So it's one of those things. I can share ideas with you today. I will share ideas with you today about touch, talk, transport, and tangibles for NICU interventions for babies that are born very prematurely, born very fragile, who are suspected of deaf blindness. Families, I hope these will help you. Early interventionists, even if you can't get into the NICU yourselves, state deaf blind project people as well. If families reach out to you saying, we've got a baby, she's been in the NICU for 3 months, what can we do? The doctors tell us she can't see very well. The doctors tell us she can't hear very well. Even if you as professionals can't get into the NICU, hopefully you can coach the families and coach them and help them know what to do with their baby while the baby's in the NICU. All right. So again, I lost my cursor. So let's talk about priorities. I honestly am not trying to be sensational with the first one. I think it's something we have to acknowledge. Above all else, when a baby's in the NICU, the primary focus is keep the baby alive. And you all know, I'm sure you all have heard a story of a child, particularly with some of the genetic syndromes. Let me use CHARGE, for example. Many kids born with CHARGE are in NICUs for months and months upon their birth because they have so many medical conditions that people don't know if they're going to survive or not. So those medical concerns must take priority over developmental concerns. I understand that. And we as families, we as professionals, we can't get in the way of that. We've got to try to, do what we can to reassure the parents and they want to assist the baby to gain weight. I think we as professionals have a priority to support the family. Even if we can't do anything directly to support the baby, we have a responsibility to support the family if we have been connected with them. And some of you may be saying, yeah, but we don't get hooked up with the families when the babies are that young. And I think in many cases you won't. But I know just last month I had a call from the state of Texas that a family had reached out saying, my daughter just had a baby born with a thing called CHARGE. It's my grandchild, and we don't know what to do. And she's in the NICU, and we're all freaking out, and we don't know what to do. So sometimes families will reach out to professionals who will then hopefully connect them with state deafblind projects, or in this instance, the CHARGE Syndrome Foundation or something. And we, as professionals, in my opinion, have a responsibility to help support the family with the information overload. Unless you've lived that life, we can't imagine what that's like. That's not the baby they expected to have in the majority of cases. Sometimes they knew from amniocentesis or CVS or something that the baby was going to have disability, but often they don't know. The emotional overload, the emotional roller coasters, difficulty explaining to their family, talking with their friends. They might have difficulty bonding with their baby, especially if they can't pick that baby up and can't make direct contact with that baby. They get freaked out. They've got 5 other kids at home, and they're afraid they're going to lose their job because they want to be at the NICU with the baby. And so the best we can do sometimes is support the family. So you use your interprofessional skills, you use your communication skills, you use your professional skills to support that family. Sometimes you just need to listen, right? And you need to coach the team that as you move forward with that baby, you want to calculate the achievement or the target of developmental milestones from the baby's true birth age, not the day the baby was born. A colleague of mine had a baby born last month that was 13 and a half weeks early. And I'm gradually trying to help him. I haven't laid this all on him yet, that, you know, as this little baby grows up, we're not going to calculate, you know, is she rolling over at 6 months from when she was born? We're going to calculate, is she doing that from when she was supposed to be born? And I think that's something a lot of people miss that's really important. So let's talk about touch. Babies born early, in the medical community, extremely preterm is considered to be less than 28 weeks. Those babies are at higher risk for sensory loss. That makes sense. They're at higher risk for sensory loss because of our 7 sensory systems. The auditory system and the visual system are the last 2 sensory systems to fully mature. Well, if a baby comes out of the womb more than 12 weeks ahead of time, those sensory systems have not had time yet to fully mature. So kids are at higher risk. Please don't leave today and say, well, Bashinsky said that if kids are born before 28 weeks, they're going to have a hearing loss, they're going to have vision loss. I'm not saying that, all right? I'm just saying they are at higher risk for having a hearing loss and or a vision loss. So we need to be vigilant and we need to monitor that. Typically, in typical development, the tactile system is the first sensory system to fully mature. That's why we need to touch the baby. We need to take advantage of touching because touch is more solidly developed and matured than the other sensory system. And the tactile system interacts with all the other sensory systems and impacts all the other sensory systems. It is important for us to remember some really preemie babies will be tactily defensive. And you need to watch for that. You're not going to touch and touch and keep touching if the baby's agitated and squirming and trying to get away from you and crying. So we need to be careful, but we still need to work on desensitization. All of this stuff needs to be done in concert with what the NICU staff tells us, right? Not saying we barge in there and we do these things because we're not medical people, all right? We know what those kids need developmentally, but the priority is health, medical needs, keep the baby alive, keep the baby safe, right? So in a NICU, and again, I feel like I'm living this life right now because I'm coaching my colleague with his little girl. Even if a baby's in an incubator, touch as often as you can. Again, if the nurses say you can't touch her, you can't touch her, all right? You might say, why? Can we talk about this? I just need to touch her. I want to touch her. She needs me to touch her, right? But we have to be sensitive to the baby's response. And if you're touching and the kid is freaking out, you need to take breaks from that touching, all right? In this instance, Papa doesn't have on gloves. You may have to wear gloves. You may have to be in fully protective equipment, but you can still touch, right? Maybe some babies in NICUs are out of the incubator for periods of time and they're in this kind of a layette, and you can touch, and you need to touch. That's what I keep telling my friend. I say, Amit, touch her. Just touch her. You need to touch her. But some babies, especially really preemie babies, have very delicate skin. I've heard stories about you touch their skin and it almost rips. You gotta be careful because we certainly don't want to inflict any more injuries because those babies have an uphill climb anyway, right? If possible, and it really might not be possible, all right, it really might not be possible, but if you can, families or early interventionists, you can coach the families to initiate the use of some very simple touch cues just to identify who the key people are. And again, I've told my colleague this, that, you know, if they allow you, if the NICU staff allows you to touch the baby, then you can start touching in an organized, predictable, planful way. Mama can always kiss the baby here. Daddy can always kiss the baby here. Brother can always kiss the baby here. And those locations are nothing special. I made those up because I actually stole them from a family I'd love to tell you this is my idea. It's not, but isn't it great? And I talked to this family and I said, may I use this as an example? And they said, why? And I said, because it's brilliant. You are brilliant. And you have taught me something that other families need to know. And they're like, okay, it's brilliant, because it's not that, you know, after 3 times, this little tiny fragile baby is going to go, oh, that's my mom kissing me here. And that's my daddy that's scratchy kissing me here. And that's my brother who's it's little tiny and I feel other parts when he kisses me here. No, but with repeated exposure, those persons are going to begin to develop an identity with the baby. And that's what we're all about. Let's talk about talk. For the most part, I'm referring in talk as communication. But again, that doesn't start with a T, all right? And how we're going to talk with the baby, the toddler, the young child. But I have to put in this pitch first. We as professionals, families, you might want to put something in the chat. And if you think I'm wrong, you call me out. And that's okay. I think we have to be careful in terms of how we as professionals talk with the family who've just had a baby born exceptionally prematurely, is in the NICU, and they're scared to death and they don't know what's happening. And now people are saying she might not hear, she might not see, she might have she's going to be, God forbid, but doctors still say this, she won't be able to learn anything, she won't be able to walk. And it's like, please shut up. You don't know what she's going to be able to do. We need to be careful in terms of how we talk with families. I'm not saying lie to them. I'm not saying give them false hope, but they are so overloaded in most cases with information. They are so dealing with emotions. Those of you who are women have had a baby, you know your hormones are raging anyway, and your emotions are crazy anyway. And now you've got this baby that people say she might not hear, she might not see, she's not going to do this, she's not going to do that, and they don't know, right? We have to be careful to be supportive and to let families know that we don't know. Nobody knows for sure. But even if there are problems, there are things that we can do. Here's what you can do right now. Touch your baby, talk to your baby, and answer the information for which they ask, but don't go volunteering these volumes of things that you all know as a TVI, that you know as a state deafblind project. You don't need at this point to tell them, well, you can refer your child to us and we can provide technical assistance to, no, they don't need to know that right now. All right, so choose selectively and listen. All right, so now we'll go to talking to the baby. Babies in a NICU are at greater risk for hearing loss, but even at that, their hearing ability is uncertain. Newborn screenings aren't that super reliable. They're not that definitive in terms of range of loss, volume, hertz, all those, they don't know. And sometimes even if there's not a permanent hearing loss, hearing is inconsistent for a variety of reasons. So it really is important that family members talk to the baby. And even if they can't touch the baby, they can talk to the baby. And it's like, we don't know if they can hear us or not. So let's talk, right? We need to talk. Some key guidelines to keep in mind. Try to talk to the baby when she appears to be in a calm behavioral state. One of the things we talked about during the early ID assessment session was biobehavioral states. So you can take a look at that, but you want to try to talk when she's calm. When the baby's really agitated, crying, upset, talking is probably not going to do it at that point in time. So try to go back to touch in that sort of a circumstance and rely on touch. When you talk, try to avoid verbal diarrhea. I'm going to pick you up now, sweetheart. This is mommy. I'm going to pick you up. Let's go up here. Let's go over, sit in the rocking chair. We're going to rock, rock, rock. Doesn't feel good. That feels nice. I love to pat you. Oh, I love you so much. I love you so much. You're going to be fine. You're going to be, no, that's too much talking, right? So you want to use telegraphic language. And families are going to need to be coached about this in many situations because they just want to pour out all this love and they want to pour out all this concern and talk to that baby, especially if they only get to hold her 5 minutes every 3 hours or something. They just want to, and they want to talk. And no, you want to choose words. This is mom. Mom loves you. Rock, 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 rock. Feels good. Whatever. Those aren't the magic words. I'm trying to use those as an example. use telegraphic language, and make an effort to use some key words consistently. If you're going to be mom, then be mom. Don't be mommy, mama, mother, mom. I worked with a child. Well, it's not a NICU story, so I'll tell it later. I'm sorry. Make an effort to use words consistently. Consider using melodic talk. Speech paths, you'll say, oh, prosody, right? We're talking about prosody. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Or use music. Read some very simple books. Read Goodnight Moon. But even when you read Goodnight Moon, don't read it verbatim. You might read, there's a room, there's a moon. Again, you're going to use telegraphic language, pick out those key words so that it's not just overload noise going into the baby's brain to build receptive communication. So let's talk about transport. And when we finish the T's for NICU, Teresa, we'll go to questions. It needs to be expected that in many situations, babies in a NICU may not be removed from an incubator to participate in movement with a parent. My colleague, I'll go back, for the first several weeks of his daughter's life, they couldn't hold her. They can hold her down. And the day he could hold her, he shows up in my office to show me pictures that his wife had taken of him holding this little bitty tiny baby, all right? They might not be able to, but that's when the family needs you to support them if they have hit your radar screen. In this instance, even if the parents, I'm talking to you, or you can talk to your friends, even if the NICU staff won't let you pick the baby up out of the incubator, if you can get permission of the NICU staff, you can get permission to gently move the incubator, like back and forth, like I'm moving my computer right now, right? Or back and forth this way. Just some gentle movement to give some input to that baby because the baby lies there. So we're going to do a little bit of gentle, short range movement and pair your movement with talk. Rock, 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 or whatever it is that's natural to you. This is a beautiful picture. If the baby can be removed from the incubator, then yeah, skin to skin contact, right? You know that. That's about babies, period. It's not babies who experience deaf blindness, it's babies, right? But encourage the family. And families, I'm encouraging you to engage in gentle rhythmic movement while you touch that baby. If it's rocking in a chair, swaying side to side, again, you're not going to sway like this. The baby can't handle that, but just do some gentle swaying. Or when you pat the baby's bottom, don't just randomly pat. Be rhythmic and pat rhythmically. Cuddle and just cuddle, but cuddle rhythmically and consistently in the same way. When you pick the baby up out of the incubator, put the baby down in the incubator. Do it the same way, from the same side, with your hands in the same place. Right hand under her head, left hand under her butt. Maybe she's so tiny, 2 hands under her whole body. Whatever it is, do it the same way every time. Consistency. How many of you have said that to teams? We have to be consistent. Ding, ding. We have to be consistent. And label the movement. Go up, go down. Again, the words aren't the magic. The consistency is the magic. Choose words that work for you, for your family, for your practice. And last, tangibles. There's not a lot to say about tangibles with NICU because it is fairly common for a hospital to not allow tangibles, external objects, things that aren't part of the NICU environment to be brought into the NICU or put into the baby's incubator. But some do. And I'm of the opinion, I'm one of those people that says, never hurts to ask a question. So I would ask. And I would encourage families to ask if they might, bring something in to put in the incubator with that baby. If they're not allowed to do that, then I would encourage the family to ask if they might use some kind of tangible. I've got an example coming up that even if they can't put something in the incubator, can they hold a certain object when they hold the baby, if they get to hold the baby? And you're saying this is intervention? Yes, it is. We are teaching that there's a world, there are things in the world, there are people in the world. Oh, they have names, they have labels. things happen and we can predict them, because when somebody puts their hands on me like this is what's going to happen to me. It is teaching. It's the foundation for teaching. This is a picture where they did allow the little Cuddle Toy to be put in the incubator with the baby. It might be, right now it's just touching the baby's arm, and it might not serve any known purpose at this time, but over time, as this baby grows and gets bigger than the rabbit, it might become a toy that could be used for comfort. It'll smell like this environment smelled, which can give the baby comfort. That's a distance sense, right? Maybe you could find a piece of clothing, a small piece of clothing that smells like mom, and put that with the baby, because that baby smelled mom for however many weeks the baby was in the womb, right? And that's anchor, that's safety, that's security. And it's teaching the baby to rely on smell to gain that security. And that baby needs that from us. All right. So those are my thoughts on touch, talk, movement, and tangibles with the NICU. Teresa, do we have any questions?
We do not, Susan. Thanks for pausing.
Okay. It's either just as clear as mud or I'm boring everybody to death. So here we go. All right. For our next two sections, before we actually explore in-home intervention strategies, there are a couple slides, general slides, that I would like to share with you about what I believe partners, and this is interaction partners, communication partners, need to remember when they're interacting with a kiddo, infant, toddler, young child, who has deaf blindness. And I didn't put them prior to the NICU slides because we don't control what can happen in a NICU. That's not true. We can't control overall what happens in a NICU. We have to defer to the hospital. We have to defer to the physician. We have to defer to the NICU staff. Then within the parameters and guardrails they give us, we may have input, right? But when we're talking about in-home and we're talking about on a preschool site, we have a lot more latitude. And in those situations, partners do need to take time ahead of time to plan how that little kiddo is going to get information in every single activity, how they're going to get information. And some of you are going, yeah, there she goes. Now she's talking about communication, because no matter what she does, she has to talk about communication. And I'll say, yep, that's true, I do. But it's receptive communication, all right? You have to plan what the child is going to do in every activity to let you know, got it, message received, I understand. And it's very important that we consider the immediate physical, visual, auditory, and social environment. Context is so important. We're inviting this child out of her body to join us in this environment. We have to be careful about how we set this environment up in regard to all these dimensions. And in terms of learning, and after this we'll hit the in-home slides, many, again, don't go out of here and say, Bashinsky said every kid with deaf blindness has all these challenges. No, they don't. But many children who experience deaf blindness lack the ability to predict what's going to happen. They lack the ability to anticipate what's going to happen. That's why when I was talking about the NICU, if you always put both hands under the baby, when you're picking up the baby's core, and the baby's so tiny, her head probably lands on your fingers, and you always pick her up that way, and you always put her in the same position. That helps her anticipate that, oh shoot, when here come these things, oh, I know what's going to happen. Pretty soon they're going to elevate me up. And then, oh crap, I'm out here not touching much. And then, oh, I touched somebody warm and that feels nice. Now again, the infant doesn't have that inner language, but it's that security and that safety that when this thing happens, then I know that eventually this thing is going to happen. And that's how we teach anticipation. It's also really important that we remember that many kids with deaf blindness, they're not very curious. They're not very motivated by the physical world. And you can answer that one for me, right? Why are they not motivated by the physical world? They can't see it, or they can't see it clearly. They can't hear it, or they can't hear it clearly. Even if they have residual hearing and vision, sometimes the input from those systems is so distorted, it's not effective as a motivator. So we have to find ways to help kids get motivated, to help kids get curious, to help kids feel safe enough and secure enough that the world is an organized place. Every time this happens, this is going to happen. You know, every time this happens, then this other thing is going to happen. They have to feel safe and secure enough that they are going to have the courage, and I mean the courage, to explore. All right? Kids with deaf blindness, putting them with toys in their house, in their playroom, in their bedroom, in their bed by themselves for lengthy periods of time, probably ain't going to do a lot because they're not going to play with them independently till we teach them how. So let's look at home. Touch, talk, transport, tangibles. All right, here we go. Priorities. I do believe, and it was Teresa or Ellen. I'm sorry, ladies, I don't remember who it was, but you're going to say, Susan, you said this last time. And I will say, I did, I know. But I'm saying it again this time because I think it's critical, all right? One of the main priorities, in my opinion, when we're doing in-home intervention is to help that family in that home. And I don't mean mom, dad, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandma, grandpa, whoever is in that home, to promote their confidence that they can care for their child, to promote their competence to be able to care for their child, and their competence to help that child learn and grow and develop. The family is the constant in that little one's life. You as early interventionists, you go to the home 3 times a week for 20, 30 minutes at a time because the baby, the toddler can't take much more than that. Who's with the baby all the rest of the time? The toddler all the rest of the time. Family. We have to do everything we can. The onus is on us to do everything we can to help them feel confident and competent in caring for their child and helping their child learn. So we support the family's function and help them build that bond and build that relationship with their child by pointing out their strengths to them, by pointing out and saying, wow, I don't know if you realize this, Dad, but before you went over and picked up Billy Bob, did you realize that you always use that same cue that we talked about to let him know you were picking him up? That's awesome. Point those things out. Point out to them, you know, I just talked to you about that 2 weeks ago, and you do it consistently now, Mama. Thank you. Good for you. That is helping Mariah so much in ways that maybe you can't see yet, but it's helping her. We can work with the family to help them know how to modify their house, their physical house, and the people and things in their house to promote the child's access to learning. How, you know, if we've got this little tiny baby toddler and they have a great husky dog and the baby's out on the floor, the toddler's out on the floor, we may not let the big dog into the living room to run rampant over everything. Family would never do that to hurt the child, but the family might not be aware. So we're just trying to help support the family to modify their environment in ways that not only cater to the child, they have other kids, they have pets, they have their own lives. But we've got to integrate that with what this baby, this toddler with deaf blindness needs. So let's talk about touch. I feel like I'm getting preachy, so I need to shut up and talk about touch. A lot of this comes from the work of Barbara Miles, M-I-L-E-S. If you haven't read her stuff, you should. It's fabulous about deaf blindness, in my opinion. It's critical to remember, all of us remember, that, yep, young children who are deafblind, they use their hands as tools. They use their hands as tools to touch things. Yes, they do. But they also use or may use their hands to be their eyes. If they have a significant vision loss, the only way they're going to figure out what this is to touch it, right? They may use their hands to be their ears. If they have a significant hearing loss, they're gonna use their hands to try to figure things out. Their hands may become their voice. Their hands may be used for self-stim or self-calming, self-soothing. Their hands may become other things. They may use their hands for self-protection. Like, no, I'm scared, get away from me. They may use their hands for safety, to block things that scare them. Their hands may become all of these things. I stole this picture, but I at least credited where I stole it from. I stole it from the Texas School for Blind and Visually Impaired website, but I thought it was beautiful. Even though this isn't a young child, I still think it's a beautiful illustration of what I'm talking about as hand-underhand strategies. All right, hand-underhand strategies they're the bomb, okay? We need to use hand-underhand. We as the parent, we as the professional, put our hand under the child's hand, under, not over. We used to, in deafblindness, say hand over hand. This is the child, this is the parent or professional. Hand over hand, I'm gonna guide you to pick up this cup, all right? Now we're saying, no, we've learned stuff. We're gonna go hand under hand, and I'm gonna guide you and help you pick up this cup. If you have somebody with you now, please try that. If you don't have anybody with you now, when you go home tonight, get your partner, your significant other, one of your kids, get somebody to try this with you and have them grab your hand from on the top and see how free you feel, and have them guide your hand from underneath to go pick something up or touch a phone or touch a toy, and see how differently it feels to you. If we as adults support kids under their hands, they are much freer to actively participate with us if they want to. If we help guide their hands to pick up this cup, we can guide them to explore it. This is hard to do without dropping it when I only have my own two hands. They can get away from us. I think if you look at this picture, if this child felt unsafe, insecure, or like, blah, he could get away. If the woman's adult's hand were on top, it's a lot harder to get away. Kids can explore better if we're under their hands. So please try this. If we use hand under hand, we can engage in joint tactile exploration. And for kids who don't have good vision, by this hand under hand, they can watch, their hands become their eyes, they can watch their partner exploring something to see what the buttons are and what happens, and this is shiny, and this feels different, and oh, this has got buttons on it, you push them and things happen, and it's a very good strategy. This is one of my communication reminders. Some of you have had to listen to me about that before, but I think it's critically important here. Body language is a two-way street. Even babies, infants, toddlers, when we touch them, they get significant amounts of information from us. They get information from the texture of our skin. You know, is it rough? Is it coarse? Is it smooth? Is it slack? That gives them information about the person's age, the gender, size of the other person's hands, temperature. Kids could always tell when it was I picking them up because my hands are always cold. Didn't matter what, my hands are always cold, and I could just think of their brain. I didn't know, but in their brain, I'm going, oh, that's got to be Susan because her hands are freezing. Okay, not a good thing, but a true thing. The muscle tone, the amount of pressure, how we hold kids, it matters. If we are uncomfortable, they sense our discomfort. And that's not something I put on the list, but they do. If you are uncomfortable, they sense that tension in your muscle tone. Story. One of my colleagues several years ago, because she just turned 7, had a baby, and they wanted me to come see her. So I went, and I saw her when she was less than 24 hours old. And they're like, Susan, don't you want to hold her? Here, hold her. And I went, no, I don't think I should. And they're like, don't you want to hold Lena? And I'm like, of course I would love to hold Lena. She's a baby. I love babies. But I said, no, I don't want to hold her because she's been out in this world for less than 24 hours. She needs to acclimate to you holding her, the way you, her mother, hold her, and the way you, her daddy, hold her. I'm somebody different. I don't need to interrupt that. I don't need to interfere with that because I feel different. I smell different. I touch her differently. I'll come over to your house in a week and I'll hold her, but I don't want to touch her right now because you need to hold her. She needs to bond with how you hold her. And I think that's really important because they get it from us. Whether they see or hear or not, they get that information from us. And the last thing, and I am getting preachy, and I will never apologize for being preachy about this, always, always, always show respect in how you touch that baby. Always show respect in how you touch that toddler, that child, anybody else's body. You have to show respect. They deserve that. Full stop. Enough said, right? So let's talk about talk. I think it's very important to develop supports to increase the young child's ability to receive information. I encourage families, I encourage early interventionists to engage in non-traditional conversations. Those non-traditional conversations can be things like the hand game where you take different hands, or you play peekaboo, or you have a blanket and you throw the blanket over the baby and then you pull it off, or you throw the blanket over yourself and then you pull it off. You rock and then you stop and see if the child wants to rock some more. You match the conversation to the level and type of vision and hearing abilities, and those can become conversations, even if it's a high five game, whatever it is. Non-traditional conversations are very important. At this age, when you're doing in-home intervention and the baby's out of danger and the baby's developing some motor control, if the hearing remains uncertain, or if that toddler has been diagnosed with a hearing loss, it is critical that you start as early interventionists, TVIs, speech paths, teachers of the deaf, hard of hearing, to supplement talking with gestures. And some of you who have heard me talk about gestures are laughing now because this is one of my favorite things in the whole world. Gestures and or manual sign. We've got to get away from relying on speech only. If we know there's something going on with the baby's toddler's hearing, we have to supplement it with gesture communication, with manual sign communication, and other forms of communication. This is called a signal dictionary. It could be called a gestural dictionary. And I would encourage you as an early intervention team, when you work with families in their homes, to help them build a gestural dictionary or a signal dictionary so that all partners who interact with that toddler respond the same way when the child does something. If she's in her carrier and she's kicking and kicking and kicking, it means I want out of this thing. So the partners are going to go to me, the baby, the toddler, and go from the front. Don't reach over her shoulders. Don't come at her from the side. Come at me from the front because you think I have central vision. Don't know yet, but you think I do. And you're going to say, you want out. Or you're going to say, you want me hold you. Choose, but then everybody says the same thing. And then to try to shape that behavior, you're going to start to give those touch cues. Remember touch cues? We're going to touch elbows to say, oh, up, you want up, you want out. It's a very great way to provide consistency. And now you're saying, man, if I had a nickel for every time she said consistency today already in an hour, I'd be rich, right? This really builds that baby, that toddler's expressive communication. Transport, movement. It's very important you assist the family members to read the infant's movements, to read the infant's, toddler's body signals. And that includes things like muscle tone, respiration rate. Some kids will gag themselves when they get anxious. Hyperextension. I'll bet everybody on this call has seen that. It's like, And sometimes it's a reflex the kids can't control, but sometimes it's like they're going to hyperextend as a protest. They flail, they yawn, the way they position their body, their facial expressions, that's communication. The way they move themselves, even the way they control the movement of their respiration and their heart rate and their muscle tone. I'm putting that all under this blanket thing called movement, all right? And it matters. We have to read that. What could that mean to my toddler? What could that thing, what could that gagging, and I don't mean when the child happens to choke on food, when the kid's gagging himself, what could that mean to my child? He's scared, he's afraid, he's unhappy. What does it mean? What are we gonna do? And everybody gonna do the same thing. Because that child's overt behaviors are communication signals. And if we repeatedly interpret them the same way over time, they will gain meaning for that child. And the child will then begin to use those signals intentionally, on purpose, to say, hey, mom, do you see this? Get it, get me out of here, right? But it's a process. Find my mouse. It's very, very important to remember, and I've heard this from teenagers who are very cognitively capable who have deafblindness, adults who are very cognitively capable who have deafblindness. Some of their earliest memories are those that are associated with movement and with touch. That's why even in the NICU, I'm going touch and talk, touch and move, touch and talk, touch and move. Movement is so central to so many memories. Because we need to remember that for young children who experience deafblindness, they're often not motivated by the things in the environment, so they're not going to try to move to them independently without encouragement. Their own body awareness might be limited. Their own spatial awareness is likely limited, particularly if they have vision loss, and it's going to be really challenging to coax those children into moving. TVIs, I'm sure you're going, yeah, tell me something I don't know. But it's not uncommon for kids with serious vision loss. They don't move. They're scared to move, or they're not motivated to move because of that lack of body awareness, lack of spatial awareness. So there are these strategies called coactive strategies, which include not only frequent use of touch, but also joint motor activities between the parent and the child. And I think this is a beautiful photo that represents it. Daddy's got the little girl, and we don't know if she's weight bearing or not. She may not be weight bearing at all. Daddy may be totally supporting her weight, but she's vertical and her feet are on his feet and they're dancing. That's a coactive intervention. It's a coactive movement intervention. And they're so fantastic because that's the same kind of thing that I was talking about with the rocking, even moving an incubator. It's a coactive strategy because those movements help develop a child's security. They help build relationships. What do you think that's doing for this little girl's relationship with her daddy, right? It's awesome, or it's potentially awesome if it's consistent, right? And helps kids get what the environment is telling them. So our last thing, and then we'll see if we have some questions, Teresa, before we go to our last topic. Tangibles. It is important in home intervention to provide novel things, interesting objects to explore, to encourage kids to try new things, play with new toys, try new activities. If it's finger painting with pudding, smearing Jell-O around on a table. But it's also important to consistently and planfully allow that child to repeat her favorite activities. Don't always only do new things. It's too much, it's overload, and that child might not have the communication skills to say, I haven't done that thing with that white soft stuff for a long time and I love it. Even when I taste it and I think it's something to eat and it's shaving cream and it's yucky, but I love that thing. So we need to repeat favorite activities as well as challenge the child with novel, new activities to reach, move, taste, smell, touch, all those things. Come on out, baby. Come on out of your body and let's do these things together. But we have to be sure it's familiar, it's safe, and that toddler feels secure. Or they're going to shut down and not engage with us, right? You know that. You don't need me to tell you that. So these are just a couple of examples where you could use these parts of these as object cues. If you're going to purposefully choose tangibles, flashy lights thing, maybe you're going to have another one of these that's broken and you're going to have the switch as a cue to say, I want this thing. Maybe you've got a second one that's broken and you've just taken off this ball and that's mounted on a card to be a cue to say, I want to play with this toy. Or off this toy, you might take just the handle off a second one that's broken. You might take the lever off a second one that's broken. And those can be introduced as tangible object cues that you're going to use with that toddler to say, you want to play with this? Here. And you hand them the cue and have them give it back to you. And you go, right, you want the flashy light. And then you get that tangible for them. Okay? So we're getting ready to go to our last topic, which is on-site preschool. Teresa, do you have anything for me?
Only a compliment that I'll be sure you get later. Please keep going.
Well, we're going to rock and roll. By my clock, we got 15 minutes. So let's see if what we can charge through. I got 18 slides. I think we can do it. Priorities. I don't think I need to dwell on these because many of you early interventionists, I would imagine, have worked or do currently work. Special ed teachers, TVIs, teachers of deaf and hearing, hard of hearing, all the related services folks. Even if you've done some in-home services, I'll bet you've done some on-site preschool services. So you know much of this. This is like just bring it to the front of our brains, right? We're going to work collaboratively with the family. We're going to work collaboratively with each other. Novel concept, right? Much more easily said than done sometimes. You know that. But we're going to all work together to develop an IFSP. We're going to actively solicit information and share information with the family. And if the child is in has day care at home, we need to share information with and get information from those care providers that watch that child when mom and dad are at work or after preschool. We're going to create environments that provide opportunities for movement and regular physical activity because we also want that child to be physically fit and healthy, right? Yes, we do. Healthy kids learn better. We're going to identify the child's strengths and preferences and interests. You know that. If we use things, if kids love Thomas the Train Engine, we need Thomas. We need books about Thomas. We need textures and make up stories about Thomas. We need story boxes about Thomas. If you've got a kid that doesn't care, doesn't know what a train is, doesn't live by a railroad track and hear the trains all the time, doesn't have the vision to watch Thomas the Tank Engine, I'd say don't use Thomas. But that kid loves bugs. Maybe he can't see the bugs, but he feels the bugs crawling on him and he loves it. Okay? You're going to do bugs, whatever the child likes. And you want to also expand the world. Preschool allows the world to blow up, right? Because now we're not just at home. We go to this other place. Maybe we go on a bus. Maybe we go in a car. And there's all these people. I work with 7 adults in one day. And there's all these little people my size. It's the first opportunity to interact with peers. Even if they have brothers and sisters, chances are they don't have brothers and sisters who are their size and their age unless they're a twin or a triplet, right? Look at what we can do to build a foundation for later academic learning. Here we go. Touch. We need to become aware of the learner's skin and the learner's muscle tone and watch how she uses touch. Does she use touch to see? Does she use touch to hear? Does she use touch to explore? You know, do you notice her always feeling things? She wants to touch everybody's hair because some people have super short hair like I do. Maybe people have wavy, really long hair. Maybe daddy doesn't have any hair. Maybe daddy's bald. Maybe mama has a wig. Maybe she always wants to touch. That gives you information. So you want to determine how the learner uses her hands and for what purposes. We're going to create a physical environment that has a variety of interesting textures and tactile features, saying, come on out here, let's do stuff together. We want to create and implement consistent tactile means to get the kids' attention. And the more limited the child's vision and hearing are, the more we need tactile cues to always say, hey, you know, we can't flash lights like kindergarten teachers do because kid can't see it. We can't call her name from across the room because she can't hear it. So we need a consistent cue. If we're always going to touch her on the left shoulder to say, I need you to look at me now. I need you to focus on me. It doesn't matter what it is, but it needs to be consistent. We need to build different ways using touch to sort out what the child prefers and doesn't prefer. And that will in turn facilitate her skills to discriminate. And we want to really formalize touch cues with that child. You say, go way back to the NICU. And yeah, touch, boom, boom, boom. Okay. We really want to formalize that. And we have a lot more control to formalize a touch cue system in a preschool classroom. All right. This is a definition of a touch cue. You can read it for yourself. You don't need me to read to you, but it's a consistent cue. Here's that word again. Get another nickel. That you make directly on the learner's body. You don't make it on your body. And I know this isn't a young child, and I'm sorry, but I couldn't find pictures that I really liked of a young child. So pretend this is a 2-year-old, all right? And this is the interventionist or the parent. You make the cue on the learner's body to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do to you next. Predictability, teach anticipation. World is organized, world is safe. It's not this fairy syndrome that, holy cow, all of a sudden somebody comes and swoops you up. No, no, no. The world is safe. It's organized. It's predictable. When I touch you here like this, it means I'm going to take your straps off. So many kids have straps for core support. I'm going to take this strap off now. I'm going to put you down now. It's time to sit down now. All right. And if we use touch cues consistently, we can reduce kids' startling behavior. We can reduce their challenging behaviors because they know what's going to happen to them. If somebody swoops you up, you'd be scared too. Have you ever seen, thank God I never did this, but I've seen it, a child who uses a wheelchair. Somebody comes up behind him and just starts pushing him down across the hallway. No! If somebody came up behind me and did that, I would probably wet myself because I would be so afraid. You've got to give a cue to let the kid know what is going to happen to them. That's respectful behavior. And that's when I climb back on my soapbox. And I'm sorry, but we have to be respectful of these children. Talk. If the hearing is uncertain or there's a diagnosed hearing loss, we gotta do what I talked about in in-home, but we just have more control of it now in a preschool environment. And we're going to introduce what's called multimodal communication. It's voice, it's speech, it's unaided, it's gestures, signs, tactile signs, it's aided communication forms, it's textures, it's objects, it's all of these things. We're going to use them. We're going to model them. We're going to put communication in there because the foundation of all learning is communication. This is one of my favorite things. Again, I'd love to say it's mine. It's not. Belongs to Amy Weatherby. If you're not aware of Amy Weatherby's work, she talks about 16 by 16. And this just shows us that by the age of 16 months, this is gestural development in months. By 16 months, kids who are typically developing will demonstrate these 16 gestures. And you say, gestures? No, kids can't see them. No, but they can feel them if a partner makes them within touching distance, or the learner can use these gestures as means of expression, because kids with deaf blindness may need totally different means to take in information and to express information. Gestures are it. I give you this sequence because, like, there is no point when you're trying to intervene and teach communication to a child and you want to start by teaching them a thumbs up gesture to go, yeah, baby, that's what I want. No, not if this kid doesn't show any of these other gestures, because in typically developing kids, This doesn't come in until 15 months. Maybe we need to start out with the kid giving an object, with the kid reaching for an object. These come first. Don't lock yourself down to say it's gotta go in this order. No, but generally these need to precede these. Amy Weatherby, phenomenal work on gestures. What this says, slow down. Typically parents, professionals, we don't wait long enough. Some of you have maybe heard deafblind time, that deafblind time is twice as long as our time. I don't know. In some kids, it's 3 and 4 times as long. We need to implement wait time. We need to be patient. We have to allow kids to process information. Slow down. We also need, in my opinion, and the literature supports this, we are so great at teaching kids how to respond to other people. We don't do such a great job in teaching kids to initiate communication because we don't wait long enough. We just need to sometimes be there and give them chance to initiate. Think about it. If you could only respond to communicate with your family, friends, colleagues, how'd you feel about that? If you didn't have any opportunity or skill to initiate a communicative interaction, how would that go for you? I'm thinking it wouldn't go so well. We have to allow kids to respond and initiate. And so I go back, make that signal dictionary, and then you can pair it with a dictionary of gestures for how the child receives information. I'd share that with you, but we just don't have time today. If you want more information on that, email me. I'll be happy to talk about it. These are general guidelines. It basically says, integrate communication into everything. Avoid verbal diarrhea. Talk or signing diarrhea, whatever. Talk in all forms. Use the mode the child likes. Use labels, but use them consistently. There was a story when I was teaching in North Carolina. The little girl's name wasn't Jennifer, but I'm going to use that as an example. I had the luxury of being with her team for a day and a half. 7 different professionals worked with her. They called her by 7 different names, and mom called her by a different name. To us, Jennifer, Jenny, Jen, those are all nicknames for the same name, right? This little girl, she was 3-ish, I don't know. She had very severe limitations. She didn't know who she was because they didn't call her by the same name, for goodness sake. And when I'm saying it's important to give the same cue about up and down and mama, and call the kid by one name, all right? Teach concepts, provide turn-taking opportunities with those non-traditional conversations. Teach the child how to make choices and honor them. If you offer chocolate milk and white milk and the kid chooses chocolate, even though you know he hates it, give him chocolate. Don't be one of those people that says, are you sure you want the chocolate? No, he told you he wanted the chocolate. Give it to him. That's the only way he's going to learn how to make a choice and learn not to make that choice again, right? Movement. Okay, I got 3 minutes. I got to talk faster. Van Dyke talked about the coactive strategies. We looked at those earlier, all right? And Kim, I know I skipped a poll question. I did it on purpose. I should have told you that because I want to get through these last transport intangibles. So thank you for that. Frequent use of touch, consistent verbal and nonverbal cues, but also joint motor activities. Have some of you heard of a resonance board, which vibrates and gives the child input? If the child is lying on the board, sitting on the board, that is a resonance activity. And resonance requires close physical contact between the teacher and the young child or the parent and the young child. Those are really great strategies to use in preschool. An expansion of resonance is coactive movement, where you have 2 or more activities in a sequence, and each has a definite starting point and a finish point. And a great example of a coactive movement is it's like a parallel play situation. Teacher and kids are going to pick up toys off the floor and put them in the same finish box at the same time, but they're doing it independently together. That's a coactive movement, which extends and expands resonance, where you're like on that board right there in physical contact, or the resonance that the girl was doing when dancing with daddy. We're going to keep the physical environment safe so kids don't trip over things. I would suggest you become really good friends with a home decor store in your city, in your town. Get carpet squares, get vinyl squares. You can make pathways in your classroom that lead to the bathroom door in your classroom, or that lead to the outside door, by taping these different textures down on the floor to guide the child's movement to key locations. Also, I think the comms people would agree, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, that this can help with kids who are uncertain about walking on different textures. Have you ever, I'm sure you have experienced, you're walking with a child on a sidewalk and then, oops, there's some construction and they end up walking on gravel and they freak because it doesn't feel the same and it moves. And so you can desensitize kids to some of that by having really thick pile, furry carpet, and then vinyl tile. So you want to do things like that. The last slides, and I'm only going to point out a couple of them, part of what preschool intervention can do for us is allows us to really get into the meat of IDEA and IDEA's requirement for accommodations. So what I have done on this slide is to list possible auditory accommodations that might be important, especially managing the sound noise ratio. I've listed visual accommodations. The two most important things that I would say to you of all the visual and auditory accommodations: glare is our enemy, full stop. Contrast is our friend, full stop. So you guys can read these. I do want to share with you a couple of things and then we'll wind it up for today. I think you can also challenge yourselves in a preschool environment to use personal identifiers. Remember, we had personal identifiers through touch. You can also do them through objects. This sequin bracelet, this is Emily, who's a TVI, and every time, and at least I have a picture of a real little kid here. Every time she started to work with this little girl, they felt this bracelet. So she said, "It's Miss Emily, this is Miss Emily." You can use those as personal identifiers through objects. And you know, calendar systems, those are tangibles. They can be, this is even semi-sophisticated. Every activity is represented by an object. This is really super sophisticated. It helps kids learn predictability, when things are done, and learn about the passage of time. So with that, do we have, thank you. By my clock, I'm 1 minute over and I apologize. I can hang around if there are questions, Teresa, from this preschool section. If not, I will, while you're looking to see if there are any questions, I said I wouldn't get to this routine stuff. Hey, guess what? I was right. There's my email. There's my phone number. Email me, call me if you have questions about anything I said today or anything that I didn't say out loud that's in the slide deck. I welcome your comments. Teresa, do you have anything for me?
Compliments, my lady. Thank you for the information shared resoundingly in the comments.
Thanks. You guys have been great. You hung in with me. Now I've made you 2 minutes late. My bad. I'm one of those college teachers that, yeah, as this hour ends, they're putting stuff in their backpacks and walking out the door, and I'm still talking. But I say, yeah, go ahead and go. Class is over, but I'm still going to talk till you can't hear me any longer. So I'm sorry. I practice. I do. I practice. I try to be on time. You guys have been great. Thank you.
This is Kim, and I just have a couple final remarks for everyone. Just a reminder that the evaluation link is in your chat box. Please do take the time to fill that out. You'll also receive the link tomorrow in a follow-up email from GoToWebinar. So if you don't have time to do it today, please fill it out tomorrow. You do not need to fill it out twice for us, however. For those of you who are from Montana, you will be receiving an invitation to be part of our group that will take a closer look at early identification in Montana. So be watching for that email. And as we announced earlier, the recording from today will be posted to the Montana Deaf Blind Project and the Montana Transition and Employment Project websites. Those URLs are both in your chat box as well. It can take about 2 weeks to get the captions loaded and get those posted on the website, but feel free to share the information with anyone you think might benefit. And we don't have any future learning opportunities to announce right now, but when we do, we will share those with you on our website and through the Montana Deaf Blind Project and Montana Transition email lists. Thank you so much to Teresa, to Ellen, to our captioning professionals. Thank you to you, Susan, for another fabulous presentation. And thank you to all of our audience members who took time to join us today. Have a fabulous rest of your week.
Thank you all, sincerely. Kim, Ellen, Teresa, thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Bye-bye, all.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks, Kim and Teresa.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Bye.